General fund, the aquatic center is $153,077. In the last budget, the transfer amount was, let's see, $139,583. So as expenses are increasing over time at the pool, the amount of the general fund subsidy is increasing. Our revenues in the aquatic center fund are fairly stable. It kind of depends on the weather and the temperatures, but we don't see the pool revenues increasing at the same rate as the expenditures, so the general fund makes up the difference.
So if expenses are increasing, should we be looking at raising the entrance fee?
We could look at it.
Kill us?
It would affect you. The majority of your funding comes from swimming lessons in addition to your daily admissions. We are, though, one of the highest in the area.
Okay. So our admission fees is, last year was $235, is that correct? Or we're budgeted for $230 this year, correct?
Yes.
And we're looking at that same budget for next year?
Yes, that's what we have. And it seems like, I don't remember which year, but one of the years we had much cooler temperatures, and then our revenues were down by 10 or 20,000 because the temperatures were not as hot. So that's one thing we can't control.
Mm-hmm.
So Tiffany, if we did raise entrance fees, do you think we'd lose a lot of business?
Yes. I do. I think you could probably go up 50. Right now we give a 50-cent discount to North Ogden residents, so they're $5.50 instead of the $6.
Yeah.
I don't think you could go any higher than the $6 for North Ogden residents.
Do you feel like people are honest about whether they're a resident or not?
No.
So what would that do from a revenue standpoint if we eliminated that? Because, I mean, obviously we'll have people that aren't North Ogden residents.
It wouldn't make a huge impact.
How many admissions?
I've heard, maybe I'm wrong, the majority of the people there have season passes.
A lot of them do.
So it's really not going to make that much of a difference to raise the
We also, a lot of our revenue comes from Groupon, which is very discounted, but we can sell in quantity enough that it makes it worth it.
When's the last time we adjusted season pass rates?
Rates? I'd have to go look. 5 years ago, probably.
So that might be something.
How much is a season pass currently?
Or 65
for an individual.
We don't do a family pass because we had issues defining family. So if you buy 4 or more in the same transaction, you get $10 off each one.
Okay.
So that's how we work them for as many as you want, you, your neighbors, your friends.
65 per person. Okay.
And then we do a pre-sale in, October, November, December. You can buy them one at a time for $50 to $5 at that point, because that helps us with our staffing so that we don't have everybody in line for a season pass day one.
And we could bring back at one of the later meeting, this is how much comes from Groupon, seasonal, at the door.
That'd be nice to know. I'm just thinking that, in every other service that we provide, when it costs us more to provide water, we raise the rates. When it costs us more to provide sewer and garbage, we raise the rates. And I'm not sure that this shouldn't be treated similarly, nearly the same. Especially where we haven't done anything in 5 years with the cost going up and our subsidy going up. I mean, it was pretty good. We've gone from 100 to 139 to 153 projected. That's in just those 3 years, that's a 50% increase.
Well, and that 39 but from, you know, from 100 to 139, that's when we bumped our wage to the employees.
Right.
Was that, it was a significant bump.
But that, I mean, we did that to keep the employees so we could actually get them.
And I was gonna say it's paid off.
Worked, I
Yeah,
will say,
yeah.
because we're only halfway through our application process, and I have about 30 of the 50 returning,
Great.
so it's been fantastic.
So I think, you know, when you have those numbers, that's something we ought to talk about.
Okay. Anything else in the aquatic center? Tiffany, do you want to say anything else?
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Can I ask just one more question on the swim lessons?
Yeah.
Is the revenue down because fewer people are taking lessons? It was 70 and then 69, and we're projecting 64. Is that just a conservative estimate?
I think we just carried that budget number forward from the last year, so we could adjust it.
We haven't
upward.
noticed a drop in our numbers. Part of that is also that we split the fiscal year every time we
Right.
do that. So my numbers are always different than Evan's numbers on those.
So, yeah, we could increase that if
I
we
mean, it's
feel
not
like.
huge, I just was wondering, is that an actual trend, or just where are those numbers coming from?
Yeah, no, I think we just kept the number from the previous year. So if we feel like what has been happening at the pool will continue to happen as far as swimming lessons go, we could probably raise that up to 69 or.
Do we know what this year's, well, we won't know because we split the
Fiscal year,
You know,
or the calendar year.
Another thing is, if you are going to look at admission fees, that would be a good something to do before the season.
right.
Swimming lesson registration starts April 1st, so that if that fee is going to change, it probably needs to change before April 1st.
The swim lesson fees.
The swim lesson
I
fees.
didn't know that we changed that one.
And then daily admission fees won't go into effect until we open, end of May, but that is before budget in June or July.
And a lot of the season passes are probably already purchased, so.
Yeah, a lot
Yeah,
of
it would
this-
be something that would take effect mostly the next year, but I still think it's something we need to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
You had a list or something.
Okay, so we can come back with some more data on pool revenues and possible rate adjustments. The next fund is the motor pool fund. We already talked about, the motor pool fund as it relates to the general fund. And I think we kind of got your direction on those capital purchases. Back to the staff report, in the motor pool fund, the market and merit wage adjustments amount is $5,230. The 401k additional 3% match is $4,306. And then we have the two trucks that we talked about. The net cost of those is $80,000. That's what showed up in this sheet, because we expect to get $8,000 resale on those two vehicles. We already talked about the parks admin vehicle, the hydraulic press. Was not on this first list because it wasn't being funded by the general fund. So, do you have anything to say about that? I'm not even sure what it is.
Is it replacing an old one, or is it a new piece? So, those of you who don't know, those are typically used to push parts together, bushings and things into control arms and other stuff like that, to bend metal to shape it. I mean, that's the type of stuff it's used for. And a good example of that is our flower watering program. This year, we should only be sending one person around to at least the on-street flowers, because they've built an automatic swing arm, dumps water into the the pots and you know, having this type of equipment makes those things more possible.
We could probably sell
Can't
the
wait to show
patent.
it off.
Can we sell the patent on
Maybe.
that?
We will give every council member a chance to drive it. Pick your Saturday or Sunday.
For the whole day?
Yep.
Then we have the mowers there, the Parks Polaris Ranger, and the vehicle exchange program. So, I guess I should make the note too that we have restructured the motor pool fund. Not really personnel wise, but the way that we budget for it, so that rather than all of the fuel and vehicle parts expense showing up just in the motor pool fund, we've separated those budgets out into the departments so that we'll be able to track the fuel and parts expenses for each department individually. And so it's kind of shaken up the individual budget lines within the motor pool fund. But we feel like it's probably a better approach. We'll get a more accurate allocation of expenses that relate to the motor pool fund. So that's the change we made there. Any questions on motor pool? Okay. Police motor pool, market and merit wage adjustments, $1,569. 401k additional 3% match, $1,292. And then we have the 3 Ford Interceptors, the Chevy Traverse, and the vehicle equipment. We already talked about those items.
So the vehicle equipment is what gets installed when we buy the new vehicles, including decals and stuff like that.
And the radios that we already talked about. So, the police motor pool fund, we basically transfer money from the police department that goes into the police motor pool fund and pays for new vehicles and fuel parts. And then there's also a transfer from the police motor pool fund to the motor pool that pays for the overhead, the mechanics that do the work. So that's how those three funds are connected. The last funds that we want to cover today are the RDA funds, RDA and CDA. And I don't have anything in the staff report for those, so I thought we could just look at the detailed reports. The budgets, the proposed budgets are similar to the fiscal year 19.
That's page 16.
Page 16, yes, 16 and 17. So the city has 2 redevelopment areas. One we call the RDA, the other we call the CDA. And the RDA's been around for quite a few years. The CDA is fairly new. So in the RDA, we've used RDA funds for the street lighting projects. We've used it for beautification, the benches and pots, and flower pots that are along Washington. We've made contributions to some developments through the RDA and the CDA funds. We don't have any contributions to developments in the budget this year. That's probably something that would be proposed, you know, as developers approach the city related to that. So we've kept the budget fairly minimal. Offsite improvements is the line that we use for the beautification. Project reserve is just whatever we think is left for future use. It's not budgeted to be expended. We have the transfer to the aquatic center, which pays for the bond payments. And then transfer to capital improvement fund is the $200,000 towards street lighting if the grant is awarded. So that's the summary of the RDA fund.
When does that RDA expire? Are we getting close?
2021 or 2022?
So we need to be thinking what we're going to do with the funds we have in there as we rapidly approach next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
We approach the expiration of that, and those funds have to go somewhere.
Yeah, and essentially the way those funds have to be spent is for a project that benefits the area. So a good example is those funds were used to redevelop the Bicentennial Park and the Lee's Plaza. Those funds have also been used for the facade upgrades on the Fizz building or the Fizz strip mall, as well as money towards the Ace hardware store to get that off the ground and moving. Essentially, like in the example of the Ace, the Smiths, Kroger International or Kroger National, whatever you want to call them, weren't going to release that property for less than what they thought it was worth, and the market was saying it was worth less. So the RDA paid for the difference between the two, and it's been, in theory, we've seen quite a bit of sales tax increase because that store is no longer vacant. So that's the kind of things that it's typically used for, though. An example of a project it could be used for is to bury the power lines on Washington Boulevard, because that's a project improvement for the commercial area.
I know one suggestion that's been thrown out there, I'm not the originator of it, but would be to get the pool back up to near new condition, since the RDA was essentially created for the pool. And using those funds to, or at least a good portion of those, to any repairs or upgrades that need to be done to keep the pool going along. That's one suggestion that's been thrown out.
So we can, as we maybe at our next RDA budget, we'll add that as one of our discussion items, is what type of projects would the council like to see put on the possibility list, so that as we approach that in the coming years, we can make sure we're picking the right thing. So
The RDA fund has loaned money to the CDA fund in the amount of $400,000, because the CDA fund has not yet started generating revenue. We expect the CDA fund to start generating revenue in this 2020 fiscal year. We don't really know how much, at least I don't. Do you know, John?
it won't be a lot, because most of those areas that it won't hit the tax rolls. For example, Village at Prominence Point is in the CDA area, but the property tax won't hit in this year because the improvements weren't in place on January 1.
Okay.
So
we may see a little, but we have 20,000 budgeted in revenue and 20,000 in project reserve, just to have some numbers in there. But we don't have any money budgeted to actually be expended in the CDA fund at this point.
and just because I misspoke, so the RDA money that was spent on the facade upgrade for the Fizz building and the old Smiths to Ace was actually CDA money that was loaned from the RDA to the CDA. So that area will be seeing tax increment for the next 20 years, type of a thing. So
Right. Any questions on CDA or RDA? Okay. So we've covered all of the funds that we set out to cover today. We'll plan to go over the utility funds, or the water and sewer fund, at the next meeting. And we'll also figure out a time that we can circle back and respond to some of these questions where you've asked for more information. Next on the agenda here is the compensation and benefits. Are we ready to go to that?
I am. Mayor and council, I did a salary survey this year, and I did that through a service we have called TechNet. And many of public entities use that. They put their salaries in, their base salary, because some people have the same job. They put their base salaries, their median range, and their high range, and then their actual salaries. And it's done throughout the state. And I choose those job descriptions to put in a code which most that match closely to ours, or some of them are exact actually. And this year I did it in a 75-mile range because we, as department managers, that's what we chose, because many of our employees that have left have gone that far. And as I did them, I took out and once you put everything in the system and you run the report I did it for Public Works, for administration, for planning, for building, for the police department, for Parks and Rec. And when the report comes out on each of those positions, I took the high off and the low off. Some of them only had 3 or 4, so I kept everything in. And some of them only had 2. A few of them only had 2. So that's how that was done. And then, like it's been suggested, we do a 4% merit. And that's how we came up with the costs. Evan got all of that and where everybody was. And it also creates a salary range from everybody's actual salary range. And it shows where ours currently is and what everybody's average is of all those people that were in part of that report, all those municipalities that were part of that report. It shows an actual and an average. And I took the average where our salary ranges should be, and then I took the average of all the salaries and then our actual and where we compared to those. So that's how we got those numbers. And then, is there any question on that, on those?
So for clarification, every city typically has what we call a utility worker 1, which is a person who's just new into the system. They're just learning the ropes. And so these cities within 75 miles of us, or even across the state, put in what the average salary is for those individuals, as well as what the range is. So if it's a utility worker 1 who's been with an organization for 5 years, they'll be making more than the person who's brand new to that organization. But this service that we subscribe to provides us all that information. We input our numbers in so other organizations can compare against us, and it helps essentially as a net, as it spits out numbers from the system that compare each individual officer or worker based on their job description and the job descriptions of the same individuals in other cities. So does that? That's
yeah. Great. Yeah. And do you have any questions about that? Then on our benefits, the city provides full-time employees. Of course, by law, we have to go into Utah retirement system. The city right now provides a 401k, and if a full-time employee puts in 3%, the city will put in 3%. The city, for the 401k, in order for an employee leaves before 5 complete years, they don't get any money the city put in, but they can take the money, they can roll over the money that they put in. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit because with the URS, you have to be vested 4 complete years, and we have to be vested in our 401 for 5 complete years. I would like to see that change. It's been suggested anywhere from 0 to 4 years. So I want the council to think about that, because if we do change that vesting on our 401s, I have to send in, you have to pass it by a resolution, and I have to send it in to them to allow that. So I want you to think about that. You don't need to decide that one right away.
Can I just mention from a budget standpoint, we don't really, in our budget, we plan that the city makes all of the contributions to 401k according to the plan that we have. We don't budget any of that revenue coming back to the city because we don't know who or when or how much it would be. So if an employee leaves employment before the 5 years, we get a check that comes back to the city for however much the city contributed to their 401k. And you know, we receive the check and put it where it goes. But there's not really a budget impact for that revenue because we don't anticipate it, we don't budget for it, we don't plan on it. So if we were to make a change where they vest at 4 years or 3 years or 2 years or 0, we really wouldn't even acknowledge that in the budget. And so it essentially has no impact to the budget. It does have a financial impact to the city, however. So I just wanted to clarify.
And they don't just automatically give it back to them. I have to request it in a letter that it has to be in our letterhead, and they won't take an email or fax. I have to email it to them. And let's see, what else do we have? We offer a life insurance policy that is $10,000 to the employee. This is all full-time employees, and $2,000 to their spouse, and $2,000 to their children. I believe it is, yeah, $2,000 to their children up to age 23. We, like I said, we offer health insurance, dental insurance, vision, and life insurance, and accidental death and disability. We offer voluntary accidental death and disability and more life insurance too. They can voluntarily sign up for more and pay for more. They pay for that, the city doesn't. This year, our increase in those benefits, everything but the health insurance is staying just like we have. No benefits are changing. The health insurance, we dickered with them a little bit, and eventually they came to 4% increase. So we decided not to go out to bid because we probably would get 6 or higher. And so they offered that. That's usually what we get when we go out to bid, is 6 or higher. So that is what we have. URS Tier 2, that's changing. There is funding for 1 year. The Tier 2 program, do you know what that's changing to? Do you remember?
So it's not happening until next,
2020.
it's July of 2020.
Oh, so it won't be until next.
Yeah, it'll essentially be, we've got an extra year. But the contribution for safety positions, which is fire and police, would go from 12% from the city to 14%. But it'll also, as it's currently shown, that our officers will be required to contribute 2%. So it's going from 12 to 16, but half is on the city, half is on the actual individual officers. So.
And are we changing the retirement years back to 20? Still leaving that at 25?
It'll go to
But the percentage that you can draw is
25 years, 50%.
Okay,
Yeah.
up from, was it 35 or 38?
It was 37 point something at 25.
Yeah. So it'll put them, essentially the percentage they can get will be closer to what the Tier 1 employees get. And the state, I think they're funding the first year, but
They are.
but the second year will be entirely on the city. So really the financial impact might not hit the city for another 2 years, but it's.
Now, I've heard that this will not be retroactive, that those that are on Tier 2 now will not get this same benefit, that this is going to be Tier 2A. So
That's not been decided.
So my understanding is, and this is, the legislature we'll see how it all shakes out. But I think my understanding is that those individuals who are on tier 2 will move to this new program, but they don't get the 2% per year for the years they've served. They stay at the 1.5% per year. And I think that's the vesting. It doesn't retroactively get them back to 2% a year towards retirement. It's 2% moving forward. But we can find that out and make sure. I'm sure that there'll be a publication from the Chiefs Association or something on
All that
it.
information will come out before May 1st.
Yeah.
So we'll have all that.
We plugged that 2% into our payroll spreadsheet, and the impact, I think, was less than $10,000. Just because some of our officers are on tier 1, so it only affected some of the officers, and it's only 2%, so it wasn't as impactful as I thought it was going to be, at least with the current data we have.
Just in the conversations with the other chiefs, they have indicated that some of the other cities will have the option of picking up the employees portion. Just to put that 1.8, I think it's 1.8% that the employee is going to be required, or could be, but some cities may elect to actually pick that up.
That is all I have. Do you have any questions?
I'd like to just clarify one thing. We've talked about the market and merit wage adjustments, in all of the funds. So Annette explained the study that was done, and they basically evaluated, how we're doing in the market. So the dollar amounts that we have included in the budget include merit adjustments, which are the 4%, as well as market adjustments, which is specific positions throughout the city are being recommended for more than 4% based on what the market is for that position. So Councilman Severing and Councilwoman Stoker and the mayor have worked closely on what those recommendations should be, and so those are the numbers that are included in the budget that we've proposed.
And also, council, I'll let John talk more on this, but you need to, for my sake, for elections and that, you need to discuss the mayor's salary. So we.
So essentially, for budget purposes, we need to know what Mayor Chug will not be running. At least that's what he's indicated as of today.
But not for council.
He's running for home. But essentially, the council needs to decide, as the council always has the prerogative to set the stipend for that position. Mayor Chug and Mayor Taylor were the ones who've been here at the city more and received a larger stipend in the past. And it's entirely up to the council how you want to approach that. From a staff perspective, I think it's worth making that recommendation before people put their name in, so it doesn't look like you're playing favorites. And the other thing too is that when the new council's seated in January, they should also reevaluate that at that time as well, since it'll be a new council and they have absolute control over it. So.
And if you remember, when Mayor Taylor first came in as mayor, he wasn't a full-time mayor.
Right.
It was the council who decided that we needed it was his personality, his education, and what he contributed to that position.
It was after our city manager left as well.
Right, and so.
And it worked out because the way his insurance was with the military and everything else. So.
Yeah, he didn't get retirement or benefits from the city.
Right.
And Mayor Chug hasn't either.
So.
What was the salary prior to Mayor Taylor? And for the
If we can go back, but it was about $12,000 as a stipend, and the council can't say how often the mayor, just like how often the council shows up to the city to interact. The mayor is the chief administrative officer and can be at the city as often, but the council does control the salary or the stipend. As I told the mayor earlier today, there have been some cities where councils have gotten upset at the mayor and reduced the stipend significantly. Not saying that hasn't happened in our city, but other cities have had it happen. Or councils have increased stipends when they wanted to. So that's what I'm saying. I think it's for budgeting, we need to know what the council wants for the rest of this year and the beginning of next year, understanding that the new council can pick whatever number they want to as well. So.
And I think from my standpoint, I'd like to, because I remember one particular Mayor Harris, when he was on council, he was saying, I don't know how the city survived without a full-time mayor, because Mayor Harris was here quite a bit too. And then Mayor Taylor came in and he saw how much they needed them full-time. And I'd like to know what Mayor Chugg and how the staff feels too, a little bit about, is it a big benefit or not? Or, I mean, and then we could take that under advisement, because I know when Mayor Taylor went full-time, it was a pretty big decision. But what I saw a lot of benefits of it. And I don't know if, Mayor Harris was here quite a bit too. And I don't know if there was, if we feel like does it work with a part-time mayor? I guess I gotta kind of get a feel from the staff too. And that would probably be one could answer because you've worked with a lot, that were, and you work directly with them.
We can discuss
So I just
personalities in a close meeting.
I'm just curious if the idea of a full-time mayor worked or not. I just
It depends on the person.
Is that completely what it depends on?
It depends on their background and what they can do.
There are a lot of meetings that happen during the day that make it very beneficial to have a full-time or a dedicated amount of time from a mayor. It's, all of you know Mayor Taylor generated more work for himself. He didn't just sit around. Mayor Chugg's been really good about going out and visiting with the employees, interacting with other elected officials. And so I think it works. It's going to be different for every person. There is a lot of benefits to having that position here all the time. It's just.
There's a lot of evening meetings too, not just
Yeah.
council meetings, but throughout.
So,
the county.
and that's why it's, I don't know that the staff has a strong opinion one way or another. It's probably going to be more for what the council, how the council sees it, and again, why the next year when the new council seated, how they envision the city operating.
So for that discussion, for me, I'd like to know, because it seemed like it was like $1,000 a month before, and then maybe what some of the other neighboring cities or cities comparable this size do. It'd be nice to know some of that information.
We can do some research on that.
Because it's been, 6 years or so since we've had?
I do know one city in the state, when you declare for candidacy, you have to declare if you want to be a full-time or part-time, and it's Grantsville, and they react to a salary based on what you want, and people vote based on what they want. So if they want a full-time mayor, they know it's going to cost a little more, and they pay them for that, and they elect them for that. But they're kind of unique. They're the only one that I know of that does that.
Mayor Taylor, he took his salary, and he had a lot of outside things as well on other boards and so forth that I didn't have to officiate in when he left. And so he based his recommendation to the council on 2/3 of what his time was. That's how it's calculated.
With Mayor Taylor too, again, it was right after we no longer had a city manager, and Mayor Taylor, because of his education, had a master's in public administration, was working on his PhD, had the qualifications that we typically ask for in a city manager. So we didn't have that. If I remember right, it was $150,000, $170,000 in salary and benefits that we didn't have to pay out to a city manager and that rest was 88,000.
It was about half of what
In the
was,
beginning, I think it was like 88,000.
Yeah, it was half.
yeah.
And we didn't have to pay retirement, we didn't have to pay benefits because he had all that through the military. So it was actually quite a financial boon to the city for that, where, you know, whoever runs for mayor this next year may or may not have those same qualifications. And I think if we're going to,
And we also made our finance director at the time, he was finance director and administrator.
right,
He helped out.
right, so I think we have to consider all of that as we have this discussion about.
And
Well, I like Grantsville's idea. One of the frustrations that I have from a political standpoint is whether it's the federal level or the state level or the local level, often we create circumstances where the average citizen can't participate from a financial standpoint. You can't afford them. If you're gonna be at the state, you either have to work for somebody that will allow you to take all that time off and you still are able to support your family somehow, or you're successful and retired or independently wealthy and you can afford to spend 45 days, 12, 15 hours a day into the session, almost 24 hours a day, down there and still be able to meet your bills and your obligations. That eliminates a huge part of our citizenry from being able to even consider running. And I think we as a city benefit with anything we can do to enable as many people as possible that want to participate. And if that means we have a part-time mayor with a little bit higher stipend so that somebody can say, I can cut back at work and still be able to pay my bills or whatever, I think that's something just from a general political standpoint that I feel is necessary nationwide. But I think would benefit us as a city as well, to increase that pool of potential candidates for a position like mayor, where we're bringing in business, you know, you're connecting with the other cities, you're working with UDOT, you know, all those things that are so important.
And I don't, and there again, this is another one of those, think about it.
Right.
We don't need a decision now, but keep it in the front of your mind, not the back, the front, so that by June you have a recommendation.
I need that decision before May because my advertisement has to go out.
Right.
So a month from now, no later than a month from now.
She's the boss.
I'm not the boss.
So do we-
Of elections, you are.
Which council meeting in April then, do we have that as a discussion and action item?
Do you want to do the last meeting in April? Of course, are we at the league at that
No,
meeting?
We
Yeah.
can't, we have to do it.
So
I'm out of town on the 9th, I mean the 2nd, sorry.
Well, the second is we were having a budget meeting,
Right.
and then spring break, and then the 9th, you said you had something else going on the 9th. You said
the FEMA stuff, but we can be here in the evening for council meeting
And
on
then,
the 9th.
then the next one would be what, the 18th?
The
23rd.
The 23rd.
We won't be
And
having
23rd,
that.
are we down at Utah League?
Yeah, we won't be having that one.
We'd have to have a special meeting on the 16th if we wanted to not do it on the 9th.
or the 30th.
No, it's too late
Oh,
on the
that's really
30th.
cutting
I have
it.
to have my advertisement out.
That's really cutting it short.
I can't do the 30th. My advertisement has to be on or before May 1st.
Advertisement for?
The
In the newspaper.
offices in the
Oh, okay,
newspaper.
okay.
Can we put it on next week's, or is it too late?
No, we could put it on next week's, couldn't we, John?
Sure.
We'll put it on next week's.
We have to be here anyways.
Dedication.
All right.
Okay, anything else, Evan?
Well, just on question on, so everything that and that was not to us. That's the 235, 253 and the 82,000.
Right.
That's the general fund part.
This is, yeah,
Yeah, that's what, everything she explained was those two numbers, correct?
on the general fund.
Correct.
Because we'll have more on the
I
enterprise
just,
fund.
could you explain it one more time?
So, yeah, that's all on the budget. We do have public comment.
We need to, oh, we have
We have
public
public
comments.
comments listed.
There's an item on here regarding, at the end of this budget discussion, for any public comments. Seeing none, item 5 is discussion or action to consider a closed session to discuss character, professional competence, physical or mental health of an individual. So,
So
need a motion
we
to-
can take a 10-minute saunter before that.
So council, the way we've designed this is we can break, go grab dinner, do whatever else we need to do, and then we can eat during the closed session. And then we'll pick back up as, it might be helpful to set a time, so if people want to run home, the public can eat and come back, or,
Yeah, and we've got food for council and staff in
Yeah.
the break room, or the conference room.
How long do you think it'll be in closed session? In 2 hours? 3? 4?
no.
Not doubting your life.
so we need
I
to-
would bet John could be up to an hour.
I think if you do a 15-minute break, it could be 45 minutes and tell people that we wouldn't start before 7:30.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, that's, what do you think, Mayor? I mean,
That'd be fine.
okay.
So we need to recess.
Yeah, so we'd recess, and then when we came back, the closed meeting would start.
So do you want that, you need that all in a motion?
Just, you can say recess into a closed meeting, and then we can start it as soon as we're ready.
Okay, Mayor, I move that we recess into a closed meeting for our attorney's work.
And I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to move into a closed meeting. Is that, any other discussion or question? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?